Welcome back to Unbound Faith. We're looking at Genesis 15 today.
Yeah, Genesis 15.
Abram anxieties, ancient covenants,
Promises. Big promises.
huge promises,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Um,
how do we even begin to unpack this chapter?
well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about Abram's anxieties. I mean, this is a guy who receives this incredible promise from God. He's going to be a father of nations. His descendants will be more numerous than the stars in the sky.
That's not a small thing.
Not a small thing at all.
Especially back then when, your legacy, your inheritance, your everything depended on lineage.
Absolutely. And here he is. Well, we find out.
Well, he doesn't even have one heir yet at this point.
No, not a single heir. He's childless. And so you can imagine the kind of doubt and maybe even fear that must have crept into his mind.
Oh, yeah, I'd be terrified.
It's like being promised a palace while living in a tent.
Right?
You're trying to wrap your mind around it.
Yeah, like how?
Exactly. And I think that's where this whole covenant ceremony comes in. Okay.
Because it's not just a verbal promise. God puts action behind his words.
Yeah, it's very tangible.
Very tangible and really, really vivid.
Yeah, and kind of wacky when you think about it.
Well, walk me through it. What do you see happening here?
So we've got, God's telling Abram to take all these animals, right?
Yeah.
A heifer, a goat, a ram, and even a turtle dove and a pigeon.
A menagerie.
It's like a whole Noah's Ark going on, but
Yeah.
just the, sacrifice-worthy animals, I guess. And he's supposed to cut them in half, which is, not a pleasant thought.
No, not at all. And lay the halves opposite each other.
Yeah.
Now, this practice, it wasn't out of the ordinary for that time period.
Right. It was a pretty common way to seal an agreement.
It was a blood oath, the most serious, the most binding agreement you could make in the ancient Near East. And the act of cutting the animals, it symbolized what would happen if either party broke the covenant.
Yeah, not pretty.
Not pretty at all.
So it ups the ante in a way. It's like God saying, look, I'm so serious about this promise, I'm putting everything on the line.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, the animals that are chosen, too, because they all carry symbolic weight.
They weren't just random animals grabbed from a field somewhere.
No, the heifer represented fertility and prosperity. The ram was often associated with sacrifice. The goat with sin offerings. These were very deliberate choices, each one adding another layer of meaning to the covenant.
Okay, so we've got the animals, we've got the blood oath, we've got this very serious promise.
Things are getting real.
They're getting real, and then darkness falls.
Yeah, this is where things take a bit of a turn.
A spooky turn.
A spiky turn, right? Abram falls into a deep sleep, which in the Bible often signifies this kind of liminal space, right? This in-between where the veil between the physical and the spiritual world thins.
Yeah, it's like God saying, all right, it's time to get real, no distractions.
Exactly. And in this darkness, in this vulnerable state, God reveals the full weight of the covenant. It's not just about blessings and abundance, there's going to be hardship too. He tells Abram that his descendants will be strangers in a foreign land. They will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, and it's a reminder that following God's plan doesn't exempt us from suffering. Sometimes it leads us straight through it.
Yeah, and I think that's something we often forget. We want the promises without the process.
We want the destination without the journey, but that's not how it works.
It's not a direct flight.
No, not at all.
It's more like one of those long-haul flights with the layovers
The
and
turbulence, the delays.
the crying babies, yeah, all of it.
But even in the midst of that difficult reality, there's still hope.
Right, because God's still there.
He's still there, and he reaffirms his promise. But just to make it even more impactful,
We get a little light show.
a divine light show. What happened?
Yeah, so there's this smoking furnace, there's a flaming torch,
And they're passing
something right between
the halves of these animals.
the animals, yeah.
Talk about imagery.
That's intense.
It's intense, it's powerful, and it's God's way of saying, I am present, I am with you, and I will keep my promise.
And it's interesting, right? Because God himself doesn't actually appear in this scene. It's just his presence.
It's this invisible force moving through this very physical, very tangible ritual.
It's like he's transcending the physical plane.
He's transcending the physical plane, and he's also binding himself to the covenant. In that culture, passing through those divided animals, it meant you were essentially saying, may what happened to these animals happen to me if I break this oath.
Wow, so God's putting his own, metaphorical skin in the game.
He's putting it all on the line for Abram and for us, for all of us who dare to believe in his promises.
So we've got this incredible promise. We've got the covenant sealed in a very dramatic fashion.
What else?
And then God goes a step further.
with that.
He gives Abram the boundaries of the promised land.
He gets specific.
He gets very specific. From the river of Egypt all the way to the great river, the Euphrates, which is...
It's a huge chunk of land.
It's not just a little, plot of land. It's a vast territory.
God's not messing around.
Not all.
And I think that's a powerful message for us, too.
How so?
Because sometimes we limit God, we put him in a box, we think, oh, he can only do this much.
Right, we put our own limitations on him.
Exactly. But God's vision is always bigger, it's always grander, it's always more expansive than anything we can imagine. And when we dare to step into that vision,
that's when we truly start to see his promises unfold in our own lives.
Absolutely. So as we leave Genesis 15, I think the challenge for us is to ask ourselves,
what are we putting our faith in?
are we willing to trust in God's promises even when they seem impossible?
Even when we can't see the full picture, even when the path ahead is uncertain and maybe a little bit scary.
It's a call to embrace the journey with all its twists and turns, knowing that we serve a God who keeps his promises.
And from unbound faith, may you be blessed with that same trust, that same unwavering hope as you navigate your own journey. May you find comfort in his presence, strength in his promises, and the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. Until next time, may your faith be unbound.